closer and closer to the castle. The king declared whoever killed the dragon would be grateful, would be granted half his kingdom. Now knights came from across the sea. They were the most fierce, bravest, and the biggest knights anyone had ever seen. 1,000 of them gathered to attack the dragon. But with his great wings, the dragon took no time in knocking 50 knights from their horses and breathing fire on the rest. He said, "You must think I'm here to fiddle. 1,000 men, that's not the riddle. One man alone, only one man, with 1,000 swords, that's the plan." In desperation, the king proclaimed whoever solved the riddles and killed the dragon would be granted their heart's desire. Now the merchants got busy. Suddenly there were swords everywhere. Fat swords, skinny swords, sharp swords, dull swords, fancy swords, but mostly tiny swords so that one man might carry many of them. But a tiny sword is more like a dagger, and most knights were too proud to carry a sack full of daggers. There was also a need for building materials to make the bridge. All kinds and shapes of wood and rock and rope and twine. Of course, with all this material, they needed carts to carry it and animals to put it there, so there was a run on wagons and horses and donkeys. Lastly, the Chinaware merchants had a field day. They sold crystal goblets, wooden goblets, big cups, little cups, coffee cups, fat cups, skinny cups. To fill these cups, the wine merchants and the milkmaids sold red wine, white wine, sparkling wine, cow's milk, goat's milk, and all types of juice. As a matter of fact, the kingdom had never known such commercial success. Nothing was left of anything resembling a sword or building material, or a wagon to hold it, or an animal to pull it, and there was not a drop of liquid left in all the kingdom but ordinary water. What was left were sacks and sacks of money piled everywhere. And did this do any good? No. The knights, for all their effort and their supplies, couldn't defeat the dragon. Now the countryside was sown with turbas and the kingdom was a mess. Only a little blacksmith's heart was full of hope, for he finally had a chance to win the hand of the princess. He fashioned a suit of armor and a sword out of old tin cups and scrap metal, mounted his pony and rode to court. Bowing before the king, he said, "I wish to be knighted so that I may rid your kingdom of this horrible monster." There was a moment of silence. Then everyone but the princess began to laugh. In fact, they laughed and they laughed, which made the little blacksmith's ears turn red. The king said, "You are no match for this dragon. It takes might to fight. You are simply too small." The little blacksmith squared his shoulders. "I may be slight, but I can fight." charged anyway, striking a blow with his sword. "Ouch," said the dragon. The littlest knight charged and struck him again, and the dragon roared. "You've gone too far this time. You hit me on my behind. I'll fry you till what you look like most in a piece of burnt-up toast." Suddenly there was a buzzing from the knapsack. A bee flew out and up to the littlest knight's ear. "We have a way to repay you. Throw our beehive and we'll save you." So the littlest knight grabbed the beehive, throwing it at the dragon's head. Immediately 1,000 bees flew out with 1,000 stingers. With their tiny swords they stung the dragon again and again. The dragon's eyes began to swell and he could hardly see. With a bellow of pain and anger he leaped into the air and flew off to his cave in the mountains. The littlest knight followed on his pony. When he reached the dragon's lair, he saw that the cliffs on the ravine were so far across that building a bridge would take a year. He sat down to think about it, meanwhile pulling from his pocket the princess's single silken hair. Again there was a buzzing from the knapsack, and the bee flew out. It asked him what the matter was. When he told it, it said, "This is easy. To cross a bridge which isn't there could be a single human hair. Tie the princess to my back. I'll fly it there and tie it near the dragon's lair." The bee did just that. The littlest knight couldn't believe his good fortune until he was fully halfway across the ravine, balancing like an acrobat. The princess's hair seemed magical, for it stretched the whole distance and even with his weight did not break. He made it across and entered the cave. There he found the dragon in a far corner. It was in misery, with its eyes swollen shut, and its forked tongue lying on the ground. It hissed at his approach, for it could still smell him. "I warn you, do not come in here. I'll kill you if you come near." It's foolhardy to be involved when there's still a riddle to be solved. But the littlest knight wasn't afraid. With his kind heart, all he could feel now was pity. He wanted to help the beast, give it water to drink and cool its swollen eyes. Returning outside, he climbed down the cliff to the stream below. At the bottom there was plenty of water, but nothing with which to carry it. Then he spied a chipped cup some knight had tossed from above. Carefully picking it from the sand, he filled it as best he could and climbed back up. But when he got back to the dragon, he discovered that not only had the cup been chipped, but it had a crack he could not see. What little water there was drained out while he was climbing. He approached the dragon and said, "I'm sorry. I meant to help you. I really did, but this cup is empty." To his surprise, the beast rose up with a roar of glee. "Thank you, oh thank you, little knight. You have saved me all right. Empty cup it may be, but it was filled with kindness, you see. And an empty cup filled sets me free. I was a good and gentle dragon long ago, before I angered an evil wizard so that he cursed me to be as wicked as he. I'm forever in your debt. I'm the happiest dragon yet. Let me take you home. guard you forever, I tell no lies. I'll be your wings, if you'll be my eyes. The littlest knight was shocked, stunned, and delighted. The evil dragon wasn't evil at all, only bewitched.